The Vorax Empire had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They were hunters. They were killers. They had conquered 17 star systems and destroyed countless species that stood in their way. No one had ever defeated them. No one had ever even come close. The Vorax were terrifying creatures. They stood 9 feet tall, with thick armored plates covering their bodies like natural shields. They had 4 powerful arms that could tear through solid metal. Their teeth were sharp like blades, and their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They saw every other species in the galaxy as nothing more than food or sport. When their scout ships found Earth in the year 2847, the Vorax leaders were pleased. They studied the planet from orbit for several weeks. They watched the humans go about their daily lives. They analyzed human bodies and human technology, and when they finished their study, they laughed. The humans were soft. They had no armor on their skin. They had no claws on their hands. Their teeth were flat and useless for fighting. They were small and weak compared to the mighty Vorax. The biological reports all said the same thing. Humans were prey. Easy prey. Commander Vecthar was chosen to lead the hunting fleet. He was one of the greatest hunters in Vorax history. He had personally killed thousands of creatures across a dozen worlds. He had never failed a hunt. He looked at the images of humans and felt nothing but contempt. "These creatures will provide no challenge," he said to his officers. "But they will provide sport. We will hunt them for pleasure before we take their world." He assembled a fleet of 200 warships. It was more than enough to destroy any resistance. The Vorax had conquered entire civilizations with fewer ships. 200 was overkill. But Vecthar wanted to make a statement. He wanted the humans to see the full power of the Vorax Empire before they died. The fleet traveled through hyperspace for 3 days. When they emerged near Earth's moon, Vecthar sent a message to the planet below. He wanted the humans to know what was coming. He wanted them to feel fear. "You have been selected for the great hunt." His voice boomed across every human radio frequency. "Run if you wish. Hide if you can. It will not matter. We are the Vorax. We are your predators. And you are our prey." He expected panic. He expected chaos. He expected the humans to scream and cry and beg for mercy. But that is not what happened. Captain Jake Morrison was stationed near Neptune when the Vorax message arrived. He was 53 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 different wars on 3 different colony worlds. He had seen friends die. He had buried soldiers under his command. He thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. He was wrong. His first officer, Lieutenant Katie Nguyen, played the alien message on the bridge of their ship, the Relentless. The entire crew listened in silence. When it finished, no one spoke. They all looked at their captain and waited. Jake stared at the tactical display. 200 alien warships. Earth's entire fleet numbered only 47 vessels. The math was simple. The odds were impossible. But Jake Morrison had never been good at math. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Ben Carter at Earth Command," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "And send a message to every human colony, every outpost, every mining station in the system. Tell them to prepare for war." Katie looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, there are 200 of them. We cannot win this fight." Jake turned to face her. He looked at his crew. These men and women had trusted him with their lives for years. They deserved the truth. "Maybe we cannot win," he admitted. "But we can fight. And I would rather die fighting than live as prey for some alien hunting party." He walked to the center of the bridge and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "I know you are scared. I am scared too. But listen to me. Humans have faced extinction before. We have been hunted by predators since the beginning of our existence. Lions hunted us. Tigers hunted us. Wolves and bears tried to make us their food. And do you know what happened to those predators?" No one answered. "We survived. They did not. Because humans do not give up. We do not surrender. We do not accept our fate. We fight back. We always fight back. And that is exactly what we are going to do now." The crew straightened in their seats. Fear still showed in their eyes, but something else appeared alongside it. Determination, resolve, pride. Admiral Ben Carter received the message within the hour. He was an older man, even older than Jake, with white hair and a face lined by decades of service. He had hoped to retire peacefully. He had hoped humanity would never face a threat like this. Hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. He called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. 47 ships against 200. The numbers were grim. But Ben had studied military history his entire life. He knew that battles were not always won by the larger force. "We cannot match their numbers," he told his commanders. "So we will not try. We will use strategy. We will use coordination. We will use every advantage we have, and we will make them pay for every inch of space they try to take." The human fleet gathered in formation around Earth. They did not scatter. They did not hide. They formed a defensive line between their home world and the approaching enemy. On the Vorax flagship, Commander Vekthar watched the human ships take position. He expected them to flee. He expected them to surrender. Instead, they were preparing to fight. For the first time in his long career, Vekthar felt something strange. It was a small feeling, barely noticeable. He pushed it aside and ordered his fleet forward. He did not recognize the feeling for what it was. It was doubt. The humans waited in silence as 200 alien warships approached. They checked their weapons. They said quiet prayers. They thought of their families back on Earth, and they prepared to show the Vorax Empire what happened when prey decided to fight back. The Vorax fleet moved toward Earth like a dark cloud crossing the stars. 200 warships advanced in perfect formation. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their crews were eager for the hunt to begin. Commander Vekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the tiny human fleet holding position ahead. 47 ships against his 200. It was almost sad. These creatures had no idea what was coming for them. "They do not run," his tactical officer observed. "Strange behavior for prey." Vekthar made a grinding sound that passed for laughter among his kind. "They are frozen with fear. It happens sometimes. The weak ones cannot move when death approaches. It makes them easier to kill." He raised one of his forearms and pointed at the human formation. "Send the first wave. 50 cruisers. Destroy them quickly. I want to be on the surface of their planet before the day ends." 50 Vorax cruisers broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the human line. Their plasma cannons glowed with deadly energy. The Vorax had used these weapons to burn entire cities. They had melted mountains and boiled oceans. No species had ever withstood their firepower. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy approach. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Chris Park, reported the incoming attack. 50 ships incoming, sir. They will be in weapons range in 4 minutes. Jake nodded slowly. "Are all fleet weapons linked to the targeting network?" "Yes, sir. Every ship is connected. We can coordinate fire across the entire formation." "Good." Jake opened a channel to the fleet. "All vessels, hold your fire until my command. Let them get close. Let them think we are afraid. And when I give the word, hit them with everything we have." The Vorax cruisers came closer. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. The human ships remained still and silent. On the Vorax flagship, Vekthar smiled. "See how they tremble. They cannot even bring themselves to fire their weapons. This will be the easiest hunt of my career." His tactical officer frowned at his display. "Commander, I am detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessels. Their weapon systems appear to be fully charged. Then why do they not fire?" The answer came seconds later. Jake Morrison spoke a single word into his communicator. "Now." 47 human ships fired at the same moment. Railguns launched metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space toward their targets. Energy beams cut through the darkness like burning knives. The Vorax had expected scattered, panicked fire from frightened prey. Instead, they received a coordinated attack of devastating precision. Every human ship aimed at the same targets. Multiple weapons hit the same enemy vessels within milliseconds of each other. The first Vorax cruiser exploded before it could even return fire. Then the second. Then the third. Lieutenant Chris Park kept his eyes locked on his targeting display. Years of training and preparation had led to this moment. He did not think about fear. He did not think about death. He only thought about putting every shot exactly where it needed to go. Target 4 destroyed. Target 5 destroyed. Redirecting fire to targets 6 and 7. The human fleet operated like a single machine. When one ship fired, others adjusted their aim to compensate. When missiles were launched, point defense systems created corridors for them to pass through safely. It was beautiful in a terrible way. 12 Vorax cruisers were destroyed in the first 4 minutes of battle. On the flagship, Commander Vekthar could not believe what he was seeing. His tactical display showed ship after ship disappearing from his fleet. The humans were not running. The humans were not surrendering. The humans were killing his warriors. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." His tactical officer's voice shook with something Vekthar had never heard from a Vorax before. It was fear. "Commander, they are targeting our engine systems. They know exactly where to hit us." "How do they know?" Vekthar had no answer. The Vorax had conquered species with superior technology. They had defeated enemies with larger fleets. But they had never faced an enemy that fought like this. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were hunting the hunters. "Pull back the first wave," Vekthar ordered. "Regroup and reassess." The surviving Vorax cruisers retreated in disorder. They had expected easy prey. They had found something very different. On the Relentless, the bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of hope. Lieutenant Katie Ewan checked the damage reports and found something amazing. "Sir, we did not lose a single ship. Minor damage to 3 vessels, but nothing serious. We destroyed 12 enemy cruisers and damaged 8 more." Jake did not smile. He knew this was only the first exchange. The Vorax still had nearly 200 ships remaining. The real fight had not yet begun. "They will not make that mistake again," he said quietly. "They underestimated us once. They will not do it twice. Tell all ships to prepare for a full assault. The next wave will be much larger." He was right. Commander Vekthar stared at the tactical display showing his lost ships. 12 cruisers destroyed. Hundreds of Vorax warriors dead. And they had not even scratched the human fleet. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the Vorax had lost a battle. The feeling was strange and unfamiliar. It burned inside Vekthar like poison. "These humans," he growled. "What are they?" 1. His science officer pulled up the biological data they had collected. Soft bodies, no natural weapons, short lives, limited strength. By all measurements, they should not be capable of this level of resistance. "Then your measurements are wrong." Vekthar turned to face his command crew. "We have been hunting weak species for too long. We have forgotten what it means to face a true enemy. These humans are not prey. They are something else." He straightened to his full 9-foot height and let his rage flow through him. "But they are still mortal. They can still die. Send the full fleet. All ships forward. We will crush them with overwhelming force." The Vorax armada began to move. 180 warships advanced on the human defensive line. There would be no more testing. No more probing attacks. This would be total war. Admiral Ben Carter watched the enemy fleet approach from his command center on Earth. He had seen the first battle. He had felt pride in what his fleet had accomplished. But he knew the truth. "They are coming with everything," he said to his staff. "Our people fought brilliantly. But this next fight will be different. Many of them will not survive." He opened a channel to the fleet. His voice was steady despite the fear in his heart. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. You have shown these invaders that humans will not go quietly into the night. You have made them bleed. Now they come for revenge. Stand firm. Fight hard. And know that whatever happens today, you have already proven something important." He paused and looked at the stars on his display. You have proven that humanity is not prey. We never were, and we never will be. The two fleets closed the distance between them. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin. The war spread across the stars like fire. 6 months had passed since the first battle above Earth. The Vorax had lost many ships, but they kept coming. They attacked human colonies. They bombed human cities. They landed ground forces on human worlds and tried to hunt the people like animals, but the humans refused to die. On the colony world of New Providence, the fighting was brutal. The Vorax had landed 10,000 warriors, expecting easy kills. They found something very different. Every human on the planet had taken up arms. Farmers fought with hunting rifles. Teachers fought with makeshift weapons. Old men and women who could barely walk still found ways to resist. Sergeant Amy Cole led a squad of 12 soldiers through the burning streets of Providence City. She was 26 years old with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the invasion, she had been a school teacher. She had taught children how to read and write. She had helped them with their homework and dried their tears when they were sad. Now she killed aliens for a living. Her squad moved carefully through the rubble of what had once been a shopping district. Buildings had collapsed. Cars were overturned and burning. Bodies lay in the streets, both human and Vorax. The smell of smoke and death filled the air. "Contact ahead," Private Danny Webb whispered. He was the youngest in the squad, barely 19. His hands shook slightly as he gripped his rifle. "I count 6 of them. They are searching the buildings." Amy studied the enemy through her scope. 6 Vorax warriors moved through a destroyed apartment building. They were looking for survivors to kill. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness as they searched room by room. "We take them quiet," Amy said. "Danny and Maria, you go left. Grab their attention. The rest of us will hit them from behind. No one fires until I give the signal." Her squad moved into position. They had done this many times before. In the first weeks of the invasion, human soldiers had tried to fight the Vorax head-on. It had been a disaster. The aliens were too big, too strong, too well-armored for direct combat, so the humans adapted. They learned to fight differently. They used traps and ambushes. They struck from shadows and disappeared before the enemy could respond. They turned their weakness into strength. Danny and Maria opened fire on the Vorax from the left side of the street. The aliens spun toward the sound, raising their weapons to return fire. They did not see Amy and the others approaching from behind. Amy aimed at the gap between the nearest alien's armor plates, right at the base of its neck. She had learned exactly where to shoot to make them fall. Every human soldier had learned the same thing. They shared information. They studied their enemy. They found every weakness and exploited it without mercy. She pulled the trigger. The Vorax warrior dropped. The rest of her squad opened fire at the same moment. 4 more aliens fell before they could react. The last one tried to run, but Maria cut it down before it could take 3 steps. 6 Vorax warriors dead in less than 10 seconds. No human casualties. "Clear," Amy announced. "Move to the next sector." This was how humans fought now. Small teams. Quick strikes. Never stay in one place too long. Never give the enemy a fair fight. War was not about fairness. War was about survival. Later that day, Amy found herself alone with a wounded Vorax warrior. Her squad had scattered during a larger battle, and she had chased this one into a collapsed building. The alien was hurt badly. Green blood leaked from wounds in its side and leg. But it was still dangerous. The creature rose to its full height, towering over her. It could have killed her with one swing of its massive arms. But it hesitated. Perhaps it was curious. Perhaps it wanted to understand how such a small, soft creature had caused so much damage to the mighty Vorax Empire. "Small thing," it rasped in broken English. The Vorax had learned human language to better terrorize their prey. "You cannot win this war. We are predators. You are prey. This is the natural order." Amy kept her rifle aimed at its head. Her arms were steady. Her heart was calm. "You keep saying that word. Prey. I do not think you understand what it means. The alien made a grinding sound of contempt. I understand perfectly. Prey is weak. Prey runs and hides. Prey dies when predators come. No. Amy took a step closer. She was not afraid. She had stopped being afraid months ago. Prey is something that survives. Prey is something that adapts. Prey is something that learns. She thought of her students back on Earth. She wondered if they were still alive. She hoped they were fighting too. Humans spent 200,000 years as prey. We were hunted by lions and tigers and bears. We were hunted by wolves and snakes, and things with teeth and claws that you cannot imagine. Every day was a fight for survival. Every night brought new dangers. The Vorax warrior listened. Its red eyes flickered with something that might have been interest. But we survived. We always survived. And do you know why? Because prey that fights back stops being prey. Prey that learns becomes something new. Something dangerous. Fiver. She raised her rifle and aimed directly between the alien's eyes. Your species has been predators for 3,000 years. You have forgotten what it means to struggle. You have forgotten what it means to fight for your life. But humans never forgot. We carry that memory in our blood. Every single one of us knows how to survive. The Vorax warrior tried to lunge at her. It was fast, but Amy was faster. She had been hunted her entire life, and she had learned to shoot before the predator could strike. The alien fell and did not rise again. Amy stood over its body for a long moment. She felt no joy in the kill. She felt no satisfaction. She only felt tired. But she could not rest. There were more aliens out there, more predators who thought humans were easy prey. She checked her ammunition and moved toward the sound of distant gunfire. Her squad was out there somewhere. Her people were fighting. And as long as one human still drew breath, the fight would continue. Across New Providence, similar scenes played out in every city, every town, every village. The Vorax had expected a quick conquest. Instead, they found a war of attrition that bled them slowly dry. For every human they killed, they lost 3 warriors. For every building they destroyed, they found 10 more filled with armed resistance. The hunters had become the hunted. And they were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. 1 year after the invasion began, the war had changed completely. The Vorax Empire was breaking apart. Their fleet had lost more than half its ships. Their ground forces had been pushed back on every front. Worlds they had conquered were being liberated one by one. Admiral Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the newly built warship Defiance. It was the largest vessel humanity had ever constructed. Built in secret shipyards, hidden in the asteroid belt, the ship represented everything humans had learned in a year of brutal war. Better weapons, stronger armor, faster engines. The Vorax had taught humanity how to fight. And humanity had proven to be an excellent student. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Vorax flagship. Lieutenant Laura Kim looked up from her communications station, with surprise in her eyes. They are requesting a ceasefire. They want to negotiate. Ben did not respond immediately. He remembered the day the Vorax had arrived. He remembered their message declaring humans to be prey. He remembered the arrogance in Commander Vekthar's voice, as he promised to hunt humanity to extinction. 1 year later, those same aliens were asking for peace. Tell them we will talk, Ben said finally. But not on their terms, on ours. The negotiations will take place on one of our stations. They will come to us. The message was sent. The Vorax agreed without argument. They had no choice. Their empire was crumbling. And they needed this war to end before they lost everything. The negotiations were held on Space Station Unity, a human military installation orbiting Mars. It was a deliberate choice. Ben wanted the Vorax to see human power up close. He wanted them to understand that the prey they had hunted was now stronger than the predator. Commander Vekthar arrived with a small delegation. He had been stripped of his rank after the failures of the first year. The Vorax High Council had blamed him for underestimating the humans. They had sent him to negotiate because no one else wanted the shame of admitting defeat. Vecthar walked through the station corridors, surrounded by armed human soldiers. They were small compared to him. Their bodies were soft and unarmored. A year ago, he would have looked at them with contempt. Now he saw something different in their eyes. They were not afraid of him. They pitied him. The human negotiator was a woman named Grace Miller. She had been a diplomat before the war, skilled in the art of careful words and subtle pressure. Now she was the Secretary of Defense, responsible for coordinating humanity's military response across a dozen star systems. Grace was barely 5 feet tall. Next to Vecthar's massive 9-foot frame, she looked like a child. But when she entered the negotiation room, every Vorax delegate lowered their eyes. They knew who held the power in this room, and it was not them. "Commander Vecthar," Grace said calmly as she took her seat, "your empire declared humanity to be prey. You promised to hunt us for sport. You said we would run and hide and die." She folded her hands on the table. "How did that work out for you?" Vecthar's mandibles clicked with barely controlled anger, but he kept his voice level. "We underestimated your species. This is clear now." "No." Grace shook her head slowly. "You did not underestimate us. You misunderstood us completely. And that misunderstanding cost your empire dearly." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, human warships patrolled the space around Mars. Dozens of vessels moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready, their crews trained and battle-hardened. "Your species evolved as apex predators," Grace continued. "You have natural armor. You have claws and teeth designed for killing. You have 4 arms capable of tearing through metal. Everything about your biology screams predator." She turned to face the Vorax delegation. "Humans evolved differently. We have no armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. By your standards, we should have been easy prey. But you forgot something important. You forgot what it means to be prey." Vecthar leaned forward slightly. Despite his hatred, he wanted to understand. How had these soft creatures defeated the greatest empire in the galaxy? "Prey species do not survive by being strong," Grace explained. "They survive by being smart. They survive by adapting. They survive by never giving up. No matter how hopeless the situation seems, humans spent millions of years being hunted by predators far more dangerous than the Vorax. And we survived. We survived because we learned to think. We learned to cooperate. We learned to use tools that made us deadlier than any claw or fang." She walked back to the table and placed her hands flat on its surface. Her eyes locked with Vecthar's. "Your empire hunted weak species for 3,000 years. You forgot what it was like to face a real challenge. You forgot what it was like to fight for survival. But humans never forgot. Every single one of us carries the memory of being prey, and that memory made us dangerous." Vecthar was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "What do you want from us?" Grace smiled, but there was no warmth in it. 3 star systems, the ones you took from us during the first months of the war. Full reparations for damages to our colonies. And one more thing. Name it. A message. Broadcast to every known species in the galaxy. A warning." Grace leaned closer. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the mighty Vorax Empire declared humanity to be prey, and humanity proved them wrong. Tell them that anyone who makes the same mistake will suffer the same fate." Vecthar's claws scraped against the table. The demand was humiliating. It would destroy what remained of Vorax pride. Every species in the galaxy would know that the great hunters had been defeated by creatures they considered food, but he had no choice. The war was lost. If it continued, the Vorax Empire would be destroyed completely. This humiliation was better than extinction. "Agreed," he said quietly. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. Grace nodded and signaled to her aides. "Then let us discuss the details." The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Every point was argued, debated, and eventually resolved. When it was over, the Vorax delegation returned to their ships and departed in silence. Admiral Ben Carter watched them go from the observation deck of the Defiance. Grace Miller stood beside him. "Do you think they will honor the agreement?" Ben asked. Grace considered the question. "They will. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Their empire is broken. They need peace to rebuild, and they know that if they break this treaty, we will finish what we started." Ben nodded slowly. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the victory felt hollow somehow. Too many people had died. Too many worlds had burned. "What happens now?" he asked. Grace looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Other potential enemies were calculating their chances. "Now we prepare," she said. "Because the Vorax will not be the last to underestimate us. And when the next threat comes, we need to be ready." 5 years after the Vorax invasion began, it officially ended. The treaty signing ceremony was held aboard the Relentless, the same ship that had faced the first wave of alien attackers. Captain Jake Morrison, now Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison, stood in the ship's great hall and watched history unfold. The room was filled with dignitaries from both species. Human politicians in formal dress stood alongside military officers in crisp uniforms. Vorax representatives waited in awkward silence, their massive forms hunched as if trying to appear smaller. The Predators had learned humility. Jake remembered the day this ship had held the line above Earth. He remembered the fear in his crew's eyes. He remembered telling them that humans did not surrender. He remembered believing those words even when logic said they should flee. Now that same ship hosted the end of the greatest war humanity had ever fought. Secretary Grace Miller approached the signing table. Across from her stood the new Vorax High Commander, a younger alien named Torvax, who had risen to power after the old leadership collapsed. He looked uncomfortable in this room full of humans. His red eyes darted nervously from face to face. Grace felt no sympathy for him. His people had come to Earth promising death. They had called humans prey. They had hunted men, women, and children across a dozen worlds. Whatever discomfort he felt now was nothing compared to the suffering his empire had caused. "Let us begin," she said simply. The treaty was read aloud. 3 star systems returned to human control. Full financial reparations to be paid over 20 years. Trade agreements that favored human interests. And finally, the public declaration that would be broadcast across the galaxy. Torvax stepped forward to recite the words his people had agreed to speak. His voice was flat and defeated. "The Vorax Empire hereby declares that we were wrong about humanity. We believed them to be prey. We believed them to be weak. We believed they would fall before our hunters as so many species had before." He paused and swallowed hard. "We were wrong. Humanity is not prey. They are warriors. They are survivors. They are a species that cannot be hunted, cannot be broken, and cannot be defeated. Let all who hear this message take warning. Do not threaten humanity. Do not attack their worlds. Do not underestimate their resolve. They will destroy you." The room was silent when he finished. Jake watched the Vorax commander lower his head in shame. 5 years ago, this creature's people had promised to exterminate the human race. Now he stood in a human ship, reading words of surrender that would echo across the stars. Grace signed the treaty. Torvax signed after her. It was done. The Vorax delegation left quickly after the ceremony. They did not want to stay in human space any longer than necessary. Their empire was a shadow of what it had been. Their people were broken and humiliated. It would take generations for them to recover, if they ever did. Jake watched their ships depart from the observation deck. Lieutenant Katie Yunan, now Commander Katie Nguyen, stood beside him. They had served together for 6 years now. They had faced death together more times than either could count. "Thinking about the ones we lost?" Katie asked quietly. Jake nodded. The war had cost millions of human lives. Entire colonies had been destroyed. Cities had been reduced to ash. Families had been torn apart. The victory was real, but so was the pain. "I am thinking about what comes next," he admitted. "We spent our whole history fighting each other. Then, we spent 5 years fighting the Vorax. What do we do now that the war is over?" Katie considered the question. Outside the window, stars stretched in every direction. Infinite possibilities, infinite dangers, infinite opportunities. We do what humans have always done, she said. We survive. We rebuild. We grow stronger. And we prepare for whatever comes next. Jake managed a tired smile. You think something else is out there? Something that might decide we look like easy targets? I know there is. Katie's expression hardened with quiet confidence. The galaxy is vast. The Vorax cannot be the only predator species out there. Sooner or later, someone else will look at humanity and see prey. They will make the same mistake the Vorax made. And when they do, then we teach them the same lesson. Humans are many things. We are curious. We are creative. We can be kind, and we can be cruel. We build, and we destroy. We love, and we hate. But one thing we are not, and have never been, is prey. Jake turned to look at his old friend. She had been a nervous young lieutenant when this started. Now she was a hardened warrior who had seen more combat than most soldiers saw in a lifetime. The war had changed her. It had changed all of them. The Vorax thought they were hunters, he said slowly. They thought the universe was divided into predators and prey. But they were wrong about that too. The universe does not care about such simple categories. It only cares about one thing. What is that? Survival. Jake looked back at the stars. The species that survives is the species that wins. It does not matter how strong you are, or how many claws you have. It matters whether you can adapt, whether you can learn, whether you can keep fighting when everything says you should give up. He thought of all the humans who had died in this war, the soldiers who fell in battle, the civilians who were caught in the crossfire, the children who never got to grow up. They had all paid the price for humanity's survival. We survived because we refused to accept defeat, Jake continued. We survived because every human, from the youngest child to the oldest veteran, understood that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is worth dying for. Our families are worth dying for. Our future is worth dying for. Katie nodded slowly. And the Vorax? What did they fight for? Sport, pride, the thrill of the hunt. Jake shook his head. They never stood a chance against an enemy that was fighting for survival. They did not understand what that kind of desperation could do. They learned too late. The observation deck fell quiet. Two old soldiers stood watching the stars, thinking about the past and wondering about the future. Somewhere out there, other species had received the Vorax message. They knew what had happened to the great hunters, who had declared humanity to be prey. Some would take the warning seriously. Others would not, but it did not matter. Humanity had proven itself. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had been underestimated by an empire that had never known defeat. And they had won. The galaxy had noticed, and it would never look at humans the same way again. Jake straightened his uniform and turned away from the window. There was work to do. Colonies to rebuild, families to reunite, a future to create. Come on, he said to Katie. The war is over. Time to see what kind of peace we can build. They walked together toward the bridge, leaving the stars behind. But the stars would be waiting. They always were. And when the next threat came, humanity would be ready. Because humans were survivors. They always had been, and they always would be.